You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button.
I don't have an update on his status, but I can tell you that he's ran well yesterday and progressing faster than what I thought he might. But I don't know whether he'll be able to play or not.
That was Sam Pittman Wednesday morning when asked for an update on Rocket Sanders. Of course, Raheem Sanders was first-team All-SEC running back a year ago, and he hasn't played the last 2 weeks for Arkansas after banging up his knee in week 1. So didn't play against Kent State in a win when they weren't clearly going to need him, and then didn't play this last week against BYU either. So he's just played the one game this year so far in the opener for Arkansas against Western Carolina, and he only had 15 carries for 42 yards. He did score twice, but that was a whitewashing, 56-13. But make no mistake about it, if Rocket Sanders is available, he changes the dynamic of this game between LSU and Arkansas. Because Sanders is 6'2", 242. He is a big, physical, downhill runner who last year was awesome and was first-team All-SEC, and it was warranted. He carried the ball 222 times a year ago for 1,443 yards and 10 touchdowns. He averaged 6.5 yards per carry. Rocket Sanders is really, really good. If you have Rocket Sanders and KJ Jefferson, who also is really, really, really good, and a dude that's 6'3", 250, you have two big physical runners that lean on you and wear down a defense. You don't need me to explain that to you. You understand it. So if you remove Sanders from the mix for Arkansas in this ball game, and A.J. Green is sort of the last man standing at running back, look, Green is a good player. Funny that he's got the same name of the former Georgia wide receiver, but he's 5'11", 205. He's a different style of running back than what Rocket Sanders is, who's 2 inches and 30 pounds or 40 pounds heavier than Green is. Just very, very different stylistically when you got to tackle A.J. Green as opposed to trying to tackle Rocket Sanders 20 times a game and K.J. Jefferson another 10 to 15. So Sam Pittman on Wednesday said Sanders is moving around pretty good and not sure if he's going to go. Kind of making a few calls around Fayetteville. It feels like that might be gamesmanship, and that it's doubtful Sanders plays, but we'll find out. Listen, I think we all thought the same thing last year, didn't we? When LSU went to Fayetteville, and all week it was, man, not sure if KJ Jefferson was going to go, and it went right up until game time. And I think I remember talking about it. I certainly thought that KJ Jefferson was going to play. And so about an hour before kick, when the word started to spread that he was going to be scratched, we saw the line balloon, and everybody was really genuinely surprised. So maybe this is one of those situations with Sam Pittman where the same thing is unfolding. It's a little bit of gamesmanship to make you prepare for him, but he may not be ready to go with a knee injury that apparently is a little more serious than, obviously it's serious if it's kept him out for 2 weeks already, but he may not be able to go this weekend. So that is a huge storyline worth watching as we get through the next 48 hours toward game time with LSU and Arkansas. I was asked earlier today, about an hour before the show, I did an interview with my buddy John Neighbors, who's on 103.7 The Buzz up in Little Rock. Does a really good job. If you're looking for Arkansas content, John does a great job. And John asked me a question that I hadn't considered yet this week, and when you hear the question, you'll understand why. He said, what would the reaction be like in Baton Rouge if LSU lost this game? And I hadn't thought of it because I hadn't really considered the fact that LSU could lose this game. Now, it's an SEC game. It's an opponent that always gives you their best swing. You were a big favorite in their place a year ago and escaped the last 3 games in this series have all been decided by 3 points, including an overtime win by Arkansas last time they were in Baton Rouge. Now, I'll grant you, that was with Ed Ogeron as a lame duck coach the week after you went and, played probably your best game of the year against Alabama and lost a close one on the road. But point being, this game seldom goes to script, and it's usually very close. So the 18-point line feels inflated just because of what this series has been, but I get it when Arkansas just lost at home as an 8-point favorite to BYU, where they blew not 1 but 2 double-digit leads in the course of that ball game. And I guess my answer to the way I answer John's question is that there would be a full-on melt here if LSU were to lose to Arkansas on Saturday, because so much of the reaction to an individual game in a vacuum has to consider the macro expectations. What did we think about this team coming into the year? What were your expectations? And relative to those expectations, how does the result of one game impact it? Meaning, coming into this year, LSU was a preseason top 5 team. I picked them to win the national championship. There were many people who picked them to win the SEC. So if you don't even get through September without being dinged twice, once by Florida State and once at home as an 18-point favorite against Arkansas, there would be a full-on melt. And it would be somewhat justified. Because if you lose this game at home, the very real question that you have to ask is whether or not the standard that Brian Kelly has worked so hard to implement, the discipline and the expectation of how you go about handling your business day in and day out. Remember when Brian Kelly got hired and he talked about, every player having that app where they had a chart what they ate and when they slept and all these good habits that he's instituting. All of those things, the discipline, the expectation that they've worked so hard to implement, you have to wonder if it's taking, if you can't beat Arkansas at home as an 18-point favorite. So, now, I'm not saying that that's fair. I'm not saying that's how I would feel. I'm just saying that a lot of people would feel that way, and I think it's probably a justified reaction if the game were to go that way. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. Now, I don't think LSU is going to win this game by 3 touchdowns. This game is always closer. We've talked about this for as long as I've done this show. LSU always gets Arkansas's best swing. Always. No matter how good LSU or Arkansas are, how bad they are, LSU always gets their best swing. I mean, 2014 was a miserable year. Arkansas hadn't won a conference game in like 3 years. LSU went up there on a cold night in Fayetteville, missed a field goal on the opening possession and never got up off the mat. Lost. It's when Arkansas was storming across the field to go pick up the boot. Like, it's a weird game. It's a weird series. They care way more than you. I just don't know how much of a legitimate excuse that is this go-round. Because you don't have the excuse of, well, it was 1:30 on the Friday after Thanksgiving and we weren't locked in. You don't have the excuse of, well, it's the week after Alabama where you're sky high and the whole season is centered around the Alabama game. And regardless of what happens, win or lose, you're going to have that emotional letdown a week later. It's September. It's September. You're healthy. You're fresh. All of your goals are in front of you. You had your wake-up call after Florida State. You've improved each of the last 2 weeks. You are at home as a massive favorite. Their best offensive player, Raheem Sanders, is questionable for the game. If he does go, I can't imagine he would be close to 100% of what he typically is. You have massive advantages in this ballgame. You got to go win it. And for LSU right now, as much as Brian Kelly has talked about all of his competitive edge and all of the things that he focuses on, this is a great example that would illustrate whether or not that message is taking. Because right now, the one game that really looks like it's going to give you some pause is going to Tuscaloosa. I've said this so many times now already. There is not another game on this schedule where you could legitimately say, uncap the Sharpie and scribble an L. There's not another one. That's not to say LSU is going to win them all, but they can win any game remaining on their schedule, and it wouldn't be a surprise if they did. So you've got to be able to go and take care of business at home against Arkansas. And then you got to go on the road as a favorite and beat Ole Miss. And you got to go on the road as a favorite and beat Missouri. And then you got to come home as a favorite and beat Auburn. And then beat Army. And then you get to go on the road against Alabama, where you're probably going to be an underdog, and you got to see if you can go win that one. And if you do, then you're staring a playoff berth right in the face. Beat Florida at home, beat Georgia Southern, Georgia State, take care of Texas A&M at home, and you're back in the SEC championship game as an 11-1 team, likely playing Georgia with a chance to go play for the national championship. It's all there for you. It's all right there, and the path is very manageable. But you got to avoid the pitfalls, and one of them could be staring you in the face this week with Arkansas coming in, because they're going to play over their head. They always do. Now, the thing about Arkansas that they got to get fixed, and I don't know if they can, and they got a very experienced defensive front seven. They lead the SEC in sacks right now, and that could cause trouble for LSU's offensive line, running game, pressuring Jaden Daniels. All that stuff is very, very legitimate. The biggest problem Arkansas has right now, their offensive line is going through a lot of flux right now, and it's been a challenge, and they are an undisciplined football team. They committed 14 penalties against BYU, 14 for 125. And that's not a one-off. That has been what this team has been so far through 3 weeks. And Sam Pittman was asked, like, how do you fix penalties in the middle of the season?
I think penalties come different in each game. I do. You have different officials too. But penalties are lazy feet, and sometimes they come because you're wanting to have so much success that you strain or you hold on too long, and so certainly we are working to try to clean that up, and I believe that we will.
They had 7 in the opener against Western Carolina, 4 against Kent State, and then 14 last week against BYU. So won't be easy for Arkansas coming in night game in Death Valley to try to pull the upset. But it's one where if you're LSU, you've got to clear this hurdle to keep along the path toward a championship, which is still out there for you. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.